Next, we're going to assemble our x-axis. So we grab our XL gantry plate. This will be the side with the counter bores and counter slots in there. We're going to be using our 2 nut blocks, 4 3mm spacers, 4 precision washers, and 20mm screws. So grab 4 M5 by 20mm screws. This is the counter bore side, and we are just going to insert these in. Hold these while we flip them over. Doesn't really matter which way, it's kind of symmetrical. So first we stack up our spacers, 3mm. Our precision shim, washer, whatever they call these, shims, we'll just call them shims. And our nut block package with the provided hex nuts. Same thing as before. This doesn't matter which way out, but we got to make sure our hex side is up. Just kind of put those on there. Hopefully they stay when we flip them. Hex side. Apply just a little bit of pressure and kind of kink these screws in place. Okay, we're going to install our anti-backlash nut block assembly for our Z plate. These slots are up and down. Our large eccentric holes, counter bores, are on our left side, and our fixed holes are on our right. So first we're going to start with 2 20mm screws. And then we're just going to flip this onto the side, put her down, and we'll begin building our stack up. First thing down, we're going to put our 3mm aluminum spacers. So last of the bag, so get in there. Next up, precision washers. And then this is our anti-backlash nut kit. So this comes with hex screws, and I believe this is threaded for our anti-backlash nut here. Okay, so when you put this in, pay attention, there's a hex opening for a screwdriver in there, so I was putting it in wrong. So just start the thread there. We'll put our nut on there. We'll just leave that loose for now. And so now our lead screw is going to go up and down through this plate. So we're going to put our hole facing towards us and our hex openings to the top. And then inside this little package we have nylon hex nuts. Put those on top of there. Tilt this up and this kit, the eccentric spacers, and you know, if we made it this far, I have an extra one. Well, it's not really an extra one. It's more salvaged from another piece of equipment from Openbuilds. I bought a couple things from Openbuilds before, and it's been fine and dandy. And this was one of those kits where I kind of wanted to document, since it's a bigger project, and you know, just kind of shows what goes into, I guess, building a kit. I guess there could be issues. The first one is this eccentric spacer. It won't fit in these holes like they're supposed to in any of these plates. Well, there's a manufacturing defect where this lip edged was smashed in and it mushroomed out. Kind of hard to see, but it mushroomed out this edge, so it won't fit in there. So I've emailed customer support requesting a replacement, but luckily I have another kit from Openbuilds that's similar, so I just kind of grabbed that eccentric 6mm spacer, and I was just going to use that, finish my build, and then once I get the replacement, put back the old one onto my previous build. So that didn't bother me too much. Actually, I considered myself lucky that I had, you know, I could get one of these and not hinder, you know, stop my build process. Then comes around this step where it comes down to asking for 2 6mm spacers, which you see here. Well, really, in my bag, I had one, and there's 2 required. And luckily, I had from the same kit, since it was similar to the XL, but it was a small version. But I got lucky. It used the same 6mm spacers. You know, a lot of these kits use the same parts in general. But again, I got lucky because I bought that kit. You know, this is totally separate. And this kit that's included only had one of these. Things like that happen, but I was starting to line up my other parts, and it requires 4 precision shims, and what you can see in here are 3. I got lucky again because that other kit, you know, contained the same precision washer. Other people, if this is going to be their first kit, won't be this lucky, and I've been very careful. Small parts have been put into this tray so as I won't lose them. All these parts, you know, I didn't dump them into a tray. I kept them in their individual bags just so I won't lose them, so I can keep track of them. And as they get done, I don't throw them away. You can see over here, I started going through these parts, and you know, I keep these bags, and I did look through these bags, and these aren't just all of them. If you look over here, I just toss them off to the side. Nothing has been thrown away besides just the bubble packaging. Over here, other kit from Openbuilds, and I sacrificed some parts off that. In fact, you can see same style, it's just the smaller one, but I got lucky that I could scavenge those parts to finish this plate. Luckily, I can continue building this. Hopefully the customer service is good. The worst part would be if you were building this and you got stuck. you have to wait 2-3 days to get your part. I guess you could make them, but you know, that kind of defeats the purpose of buying a kit. Everything, a lot of stuff's in their packages, and it's only taken out as needed. I have searched around the area, as an area, just this table, underneath it, underneath the chairs, and I haven't found it yet, but maybe I will, maybe I won't. Okay, next up for this kit, we are going to add our wheels onto our backlash nut plate. What you're going to need are 4 wheels, 4 M5x20, 2 6mm spacers, 4 precision washers. I know one's different, that's a long story. 2 centric spacers, 4 lock nuts. So our nut plate here, we are going to insert 4 bolts on this backside. Carefully flip it over. So this is the fixed side. These are our eccentric side. So on the fixed side, we add our 6mm spacers. On our eccentric side, we're going to add our eccentric adjustment. When we do this adjustment, we're looking for our 6mm engraving, and we want those pointing off to the right for our initial adjustment. Okay. And if you just kind of glance at it, it's the hole to the thinnest wall side. So we'll just put those to the right, but I think as we screw them in, they will kind of spin, so it doesn't really matter. Okay. And on our precision shims, I did measure this, and it's very close. I don't think it'll make a difference, but there's a reason why I have a small one. And add our wheels onto our posts. And then add our black nylon locking nuts. Just kind of spin those on by hand, and we'll tilt those up and use our screwdriver. Our Openbuilds wrench. So on our eccentric side, we're going to, so our 6mm marking is there. We're just gonna wrench that till it's facing out. Millimeter, so this next one looks like a 90-degree turn. That should be good for that. Next, we're going to assemble our X plate. Here is our plate we just made. Eccentric holes on the bottom. Here's another XL plate. Eccentric holes in the bottom. And we are going to use 4 65mm screws for our eccentric side, eccentric spacer, precision shim wheel, 9mm spacer, wheel, shim, eccentric spacer. For the fixed side, 6mm spacer, precision shim, wheel, 9mm spacer, wheel, precision shim, and then a 6mm spacer. And then once that gets all stacked up, we'll sandwich these plates and we'll lock them in with 4 washers and 4 black nylon lock nuts. So our XL plate, first we're going to drop in our bolts. And we want these bolts to sit in these countersunk holes, these counter bores. So now we carefully flip over. Still, our eccentric holes are on the bottom. And now we just do our stack up. I'll just do each set at a time. So our eccentric spacers, washers, wheel, 9mm spacers, wheel, shim, and eccentric spacer. So these will go hex side down with the lip facing up. To set these, I'll look it up here in a little bit. Okay, so the fixed side, start with 6mm spacers, precision shim, stream wheel, 9mm spacer, wheel, precision shim, and our 6mm spacers. So now when we stack this, put our washers on, sharp edge down. And our black nylon lock nuts. Just going to finger tight these, and we'll use our wrench and screwdriver to finish them off. So as we tilt this, just have to make sure our spacers are getting seated. Okay, if our thread is going through this way, then we want the most adjustment. Okay, looks like. Next up, we'll be assembling the 2 plates together, the X and the Z. Main thing is orientations. Our nut block will be on the bottom. Our eccentric adjustments for this one will be facing towards us. Our plate that we're going to attach here, we are going to, let's see, I believe we want the eccentric side on this way. So our adjustments will, gravity will sit down here and we'll adjust our wheels up how snug they are to our C-beam, and this will adjust how tight horizontally we are, and these hopefully will be just vertical, but orientation is important. So nut blocks on the bottom side, eccentrics on the bottom side, and for this Z plate, our eccentrics are on the right side. And we're going to use these holes, which on this plate, actually they're all the same plates, but in this orientation are through holes, but this is rotated 90 degrees and these are threaded holes. And we will attach these with M5 by 12 millimeter screws. So line our plate up. Next we'll be installing this Z-axis. We grab our 250 millimeter C-beam, our Z-axis carriage we've made, our 250 millimeter lead screw, these I think there's 8 millimeter washers, I forgot what they call them, but they're the bigger, thinner type, and these are for resting on the bearings. These are the bearings we pointed out earlier. These will be for our C-beams. Our NEMA 23 motor. These are shaft collars, 50 millimeter M5 by 50 millimeter, 40 millimeter aluminum spacers, and M5 by 20 millimeter screws, and our 2 end plates, and also a flexible shaft coupling. So according to the installation video, first step here is to run our C-beam through our wheels. And actually that feels pretty good right off the bat. So what we can do is we can adjust these wheels to adjust the contact pressure. And kind of, well, I mean, you can see there's this wheel spinning when I move this one. It's making good contact. I don't know what the exact standard for this stuff is, but as far as I'm concerned, it runs very smooth, up and down. It takes little effort, but the big thing is I don't see any play, so I'm just going to call that good from right off the bat. So maybe I got lucky. And if it comes down to, you can adjust it. So, okay, we're going to flip this on its bottom. Next up will be motor attachment. So we'll say this is the back side, so it'll be important when we mount our motor. So back side, and this is the top side also. So we're gonna mount our motor with the wire on the bottom side, and we are going to use our coupling. So if you look in here, there's a small diameter and a big diameter. This large diameter is for our lead screw. The small diameter will fit the shaft of this stepper motor. And also on the stepper motor, we have a small flat spot which we can use our little set screw. Is there? Just make sure it's about halfway through. Since this rod kind of bottom out this in your collar, we'll just kind of put that in there and just kind of make sure our stepper shaft doesn't, and you can see these allow for a little bit of flex, and as long as you're not running too high RPMs and things can flex quite a bit. So our flat spot, we are going to use, see our flat spot here, and our little set screw. So we'll use our lead screw to adjust the depth. Let me square this up. And I'm going to tighten this set screw so it hits this flat spot. Do I even have the right screw? No, I don't. Okay. Let's get that a little bit of snug. But that's not what is going to hold all the clamping power. Is then we have this other screw which will clamp onto our shaft. So this one, just want to make sure it's very snug. So now that we have our coupler on our stepper motor, next is attach our stepper motor to our C-beam end plate. And to do that, we're going to use our M5 by 50 millimeter screws and our 40 millimeter spacers slash standoff. So all we have to do is orientate our wire towards the back side. We insert our 50 millimeter bolts at our standoff spacers. Have about that much thread poking through. And then I need to kind of rotate this so I can screw this in without hitting the camera. So we just need to hit these holes. Real simple. Just joking. Yeah, alright. That one's threading in. And this one threading in. Make sure those are nice and snug, and this is what you want to see. Just want to see some gap in the between there, so I think they did a good job of designing this. That's for sure. There's plenty of thought put into it. Next, we're going to install our lead screw. So now, first we insert it through, and here goes the way we stack this up. And this stack will be for this end plate. So first goes in our bearing. Next goes in our large, or I don't know, large, but I'm not sure what they were calling this one. These washers here, these kind of put that in there, and then our shaft collar. And this may need to be opened up a bit. See in here, just kind of back that off until it's clear. We'll just slide that on there. I don't know which good way to show this. So we want all that hardware to stay on this side. And as we kind of get closer, we want to start threading this into our, kind of hard to see, into our backlash nut. I'm going to keep screwing this in until I just have a little bit of screw projecting from there, maybe about 4 inches. As you can see, as I was screwing, this side was coming through. So what we want to do is do the same exact combo. So we stack up with our bearing, our washer for this bearing, then a shaft collar. So we're going to back out this set screw. And back it out enough. So we ended up filing down the burrs on the inside of our shaft collar. So as you can see now, it slides freely, which is good because we don't want to be spinning this thing. We just want to have to kind of slide it and then lock it into place. So our assembly is to put on our washer and then our bearing, and then what we want to do is stick this screw partially in there, and this gives us a little bit of room to play with our bearing. So once that's in there, our bearing, we're going to push the rest of this whole assembly inside, and so our shaft is now inside our coupler. Our next step is to tighten up our set screw. That'll kind of lock it into place. And actually, let's get this bearing seated first. So this is the other side. We'll just wiggle this until the bearing gets seated in. Bearing seated in, and now we will hold it against our washer and then tighten our set screw. We'll come back over here, same thing, slide it tight. We'll lock down our set screw. So this locks down our horizontal movement of the shaft, at least. And then now we just tighten our coupler, and this will tighten around our lead screw. So now we have an assembly.